You want to eat those squirrels too? I mean, I've heard that those things are really gamey, plus full of diseases and such, but yeah, really gamey. We opened this week with my Higurashi PTSD already kicking in with those damn cicadas. Actually, wait, Chiaki Kon directed this episode, didn't she? Oh no, it's actually becoming Higurashi! Well, actually no. The Precure were just going to the countryside to visit Uta's grandparents, or more specifically, grandparent. Yeah, as that cold opener actually kind of subtly hinted at, Uta's grandmother had already passed away. It was an effective, yet subtle way of hinting at, thus preventing it from being heavy-handed or overly melodramatic, which was the tone carried throughout this episode. So yeah, I'll just say right off the bat, this is one of the better episodes we've gotten recently. It also helps that Uta didn't point to the heavens and then wax philosophical about her grandmother. If she did that, I wouldn't even be here right now. Anyway, the other big plot point of the episode was Kyutaro, who we learned was originally the grandmother's dog. And to help with this narrative, they also let us hear his inner thoughts for this one episode. Though, really, I think it was more a case that someone finally realized that they had hired Kenjiro Tsuda to voice this dog, and they were just kind of wasting his talents.
こう言ったんだ。今年もここでいっぱい遊ぶぞ。金ならある。とっととブツを用意してくれ。
Anyway, after paying their respects to the grandmother, and a cute little montage, the heavier stuff had to come in, as Uta's grandfather said that he wanted his granddaughter to help him sort through the grandmother's belongings because...
わしももう年だ。元気なうちにおばあちゃんの部屋を片付け。
Hey, I said it wasn't overly melodramatic. I didn't say it was not there at all. And thankfully, yeah, they didn't overdo it with the sappy stuff, and only really let the moments that should have been emotionally impactful be just that. For instance, this shot of Uta's obscured face actually got across a lot more emotion than just a full-on sad face would've, along with, of course, her running out of the room. They also could have had her shed a few tears here, but by not doing it, it suggested that she was bottling up her emotions, which of course is just a part of the denial phase of the 5 stages of grief, and yeah, jeez. Can you tell I'm already liking this episode way more than last week's? I mean, it just helps when I can actually break down and analyze this stuff. Anyway, Uta revealed that part of the reason she was still going through the grieving process was because she was afraid that if she did completely move on from her grandmother, she might end up forgetting about her in the long run. Obviously, this is not an uncommon concern for anyone who's lost a loved one, and I'm glad to bring it up here. With that though, Kyutaro decided to surprise his owner by enlisting some help from her friends and family.
キューちゃんどうしたの？
みんなこれを見て。
We gotta kill that Puss in Boots and take his wish.
お前は
死神。
Now, of course, he and the grandfather remembered how Granny had buried a time capsule that could help cheer up Uta. Thus, he gave the Cures and their pooch permission to dig up his backyard, which, yeah, you have a good grandfather when he says it's okay to ruin his lawn. Conversely, Chokin continued to show why the villains of this show have been nothing short of pathetic because of their inability to organize.
一人ってのもいいものさ。
Gives you more time to post on your X account, don't it? Back with the Alakires, minus one leader, Kyutaro led them to where the time capsule was buried. And even though Kokoro and Nana said that they'd help dig it up, Kyutaro and Purin did most of the digging. Like the dog I get, but when the fairy mascot can dig more than you two, y'all really should just stick with your idle stuff. That said, it was also meant to highlight Purin's dedication to helping Uta, which would be important later in the episode. Anyway, eventually they dug up the capsule, but of course, after a moment of victory, there just had to come a moment of conflict as Shokine used Kyutaro to make,
What the hell is even that?
Like, I'm not exaggerating, it took me a while to figure out that these were slippers like the one that Kyutaro was chewing on earlier in the episode. Now, I get that represent Kyutaro's connection to the grandmother, but as a monster of the week, it's just kind of lame. I mean, unless you're Akiko from Kamen Rider Double, they're not exactly made for offense, which was even kind of highlighted in the fight this week, with the monster not using many gimmicks other than kicking a little more than usual. Just saying, y'all could have gone with a dog monster. Or are they still off limits even a full season later? That aside, the fight this week was actually really good thanks to just being a pure Sakuga fest, compliments of Yukiko Ueda, who's been criminally underused this whole season. Like, even after getting off to a great start with the first episode of this show, she has been used very sparingly, with this just being her 4th episode so far. That said, it also does make you wonder why they would use her here in what's not exactly a filler, but also not technically a main plot episode. I mean, there is some character lore that we'll get to in just a sec, but does that alone really earn it this animation, even though it's appreciated? Or is it just the Seo Kaiba effect, where the dude always has to hog the best animated scenes for himself? Anyway, Uta opened a time capsule that throughout this episode was claimed to be the source of a lot of happiness. In it, she found some candy, as well as a familiar looking spoon mic, which then led us to learning about the origins of this thing, as the OG one was a spoon that she used to eat some pudding that her grandma gave her after Uta got into a fight with a friend. So basically this is all a Gav plot from the start, minus the drug dealing and human trafficking. Nah, it was actually a really wholesome tale about Uta repaying her grandmother for the pudding by singing her first quote-unquote idol song, which of course she would carry on with her as she got older and after her grandmother passed away. Wisely, they mostly held off on the sadder stuff for later in the episode to not make this overly schmaltzy, plus, they're still in the middle of a fight right now. Speaking of which, Uta launched a counterattack, which, neatly enough, they didn't use the usual stock animation in order to really get across the intensity of her one punch here. Though of course afterwards, she then launched into her usual stock finisher. Later, the grandfather confirmed that it was indeed the same spoon from back then, hopefully after it was washed, and that Granny, knowing that her days were winding down, wanted to preserve it for her granddaughter. Yeah, I really gotta give this episode a lot of credit for actually showing this elderly woman on her deathbed to really hammer home how she was thinking about her granddaughter in her final hours and what sort of values she wanted her to treasure through that little spoon. It's very mature writing that you can read a lot into, and also makes you forget that this is a Sunday morning anime and... Yeah, should have seen that coming considering who wrote this episode. Hint, it's not Yoshimi Arita, nor that guy, though kind of close. I mean, granted, it was almost immediately balanced out with some more melodrama, as Gramps remembered the day of his wife's funeral, and Q-Taro comforting Uta, but again, this episode has just done a fantastic job balancing out the varying tones of this episode, so it never feels overly silly or sappy at any point. And while this is all obviously meant to highlight the bonds between Uta, her pooch, and her granny, we also got hints of us returning to the love triangle conflict between the pink lead and these fairies. I will say, it does feel a little late to get back to this plot point, but whatever, hopefully we can at least get some resolution to whatever Marilyn's sacrifice was now. With that, the episode ended with almost seeming like Uta had become a dog whisperer who could guess what Q-Taro wanted for dinner, only to get 0-calorie love. Well, maybe you would have had better luck as a cat.
なるほど。まだ若えのになかなかいい面構えだ。
This is just an excellent episode that managed to flesh out Uta more than really some of the main plot episodes. Even though this backstory wasn't all that idol-y, it did strongly tie into her origins of why she loves to sing so much. I think it also helped that the staff listings for this one was actually very similar to the first episode of the series, with one big change that I think was actually for the better. The writer this week was Akiko Inoue, who we have brought up more than once in this show, but this is easily her best outing so far. Between this, Mahou Sky, and of course Gojuja, I think she does just have a clear vision for all of the shows she works on. This of course includes everyone's characterization, in particular the leads. This backstory of how Uta got into idol singing was both really heartwarming and also nicely in keeping with the show's themes of sharing passionate feelings with others. It was told through what could have been a really schmaltzy episode plot, but as has been the case with her other show from the same season, Akiko does tend to manage the tones of her plots really well. Hell, if she wasn't head writing what's been a really solid Sentai season so far, I kind of wish she was the show's head writer, as this episode even restarted a plot point that has been unfortunately sidelined for a while. It all just highlights how she knows how to manage all of these characters. Maybe she will get her own series in 2026 when both of these shows will wrap up around the same time, but until then, I think she's just been one of the better secondary writers of the season so far. It also of course helps when the direction and animation is a lot more on point thanks to having Chiaki Kon in charge and not writing the episode. Also seriously, this is only her second episode after the premiere? She's being used less than Yukiko Ueda, who gave us another Sakuga Fest of a fight. But yeah, between all of that and Kyutaro just being a good boy, this is overall easily one of the best episodes of the latter part of the series so far, with great writing, thoughtful direction, and amazing animation. I guess every dog has their day, especially ones who can duke it out with Puss in Boots.
いずれまた会う時が来る。だろ?
Thanks for watching, and if you have a dog,
have your pet spayed or neutered. Goodbye, everybody.
And after that, make you watch some of our other videos to make your pooch feel a little better at least. Look forward to Princession Orchestra. Until then though, farewell for now my friends, and ooh, the Blue Eyes Archetype is getting some new support. Better dust off some of my old cards.